Season 2 of the Kardashians in Colorado. Oh, excuse me, Brad, wrong script. Season 2 of Colorado football under Deion Sanders is underway. We're heading out to Boulder, Colorado to give you an inside look and preview at the Colorado Buffaloes heading in to the 2024 football season. I'm Nathan Johnston here with my co-host, Brad Hopkins. It's time to break the huddle. Brad, I had a little bit of slip up there in the intro. I mentioned the Kardashians. You know, the Deion story on ESPN and all these news networks is just as bad as the Kardashians, if we're being honest. We know that his son, Shedeur Sanders, and Shiloh Sanders have reached out via Instagram to recruit players into the transfer portal saying, quote, "This is not last chance you." Now, Brad, I don't know if that speaks volumes to how bad of a shape this program is in. And I don't want to give too much heat to the Colorado Buffaloes, but I'm going to be honest with you. It doesn't get much easier from here heading into the Big 12. Brad, let's first start off with the coaching changes at Colorado. Now, this is a whole new year for Deion Sanders, new coaching staff, new players heading into a new conference into the Big 12. Let's start off with some of the new coaches, Brad. Start off with a guy like Phil Loadholt, and then you also have Robert Livingston, and then finishing off with Jason Phillips, the wide receiver coach. We'll break down all three, but Brad, what are your thoughts so far on these three coaches? And just give us a little insight on what Deion's dealing with heading into year two. He's getting a little bit of taste of college football with coaching turnover.
Yeah, Nate, absolutely. So I really want to focus on Robert Livingston, the new defensive coordinator for Colorado. Played from college at William & Mary from 2007 to 2009. Went to Furman for a year, went to Vanderbilt for a year, and since 2012 has been with the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, the Bengals, we know, a great organization. They've had some success. Since 2016 up until last year, 2023, was the safety / defensive back coach. He does not have any defensive coordinator experience, so no experience, calling games. And a big thing for me is there's no kind of recruiting experience there. And I think this is a theme with Deion, is that, to me at least, we've seen some trends with him and his staff. They just really, there's some lack of recruiting experience there, which, take that with what you will. I know recruiting's changed with NIL and the transfer portal, but at the end of the day, Nate, you still gotta go recruit guys. Deion, I think, is obviously trying to take a little bit different approach. What he's bringing out of high school guys versus transfer portal guys, we'll get into that a little bit later on in this episode. But I think it's really interesting. Nate, I will say before I turn it over to you with the coaching changes, I think getting a new offensive line coach was good in there. Their offensive line was so bad last year. I mean, really, really bad. And I think Shedeur Sanders is a good quarterback. I think he'll be a first-round pick. I'm not quite as high on him as some people are. I've seen that some people think he's going number one in the 2025 draft, or top five. I think he's good. I don't think he's great, but he would benefit from an improved offensive line. I think we can both agree on that. So I don't know, man. There's so much drama in Boulder, and I'm going to get into more of my thoughts on Deion in a few minutes. Just a closing point on this topic is, if Deion's going to continue to stay there in Boulder and have success, he's got to get some guys with some ties to the college game that will give him a recruiting footprint in some areas. That's my big take with this.
Yeah, Brad, and I know this is going to be a very, very controversial take / comparison, but when I think about Deion as a coach, I have to relate him to Coach O at LSU. Look, he's a great marketer. He knows how to bring in talent. But what did Coach O lack at LSU after that national championship year? Good coordinators. He lost his DC and his OC. And I think I agree with you, Brad. If Deion's going to have any success at this level, he's going to have to bring in coordinators and position coaches with actual coaching experience from big-time conferences, from big-time teams. There's plenty of coaches out there, but Brad, you have to think, with all the talent out there, why is he not able to bring in some of these top coordinators, some of these top position coaches? It kind of makes me wonder a little bit. And, my friend asked me the other day, he said, "What's going on in Colorado?" Well, look, I'm not an inside reporter for the Colorado Buffaloes or anything like that, but it's easy to write a check, right? It's another thing to develop and coach players. And when I look ahead at their 2025 recruiting class, guess how many commits they have right now? I'll be waiting for a little bit because it's zero. They don't have anyone. They have one guy in the class of 2026 and zero in 2027. Deion recently mentioned also that he wasn't going to go to in-home visits, that he was just going to have guys out there. And I think when you're a parent, regardless of what society is like nowadays, you want to make sure that your child is protected over those 4 years at college. And that's not to say that Deion won't do that. I think Deion's a very stand-up guy. I think he's a great, great football player, Hall of Famer, of course. But when it comes to coaching, you can be really good at playing, but you can be a bad coach, and you can be really bad at playing, and you can be really good at coaching. Prime example, Kellen Moore. Look, he was great in college at Boise State, right? But after that, he was horrible in the NFL. But look at him now. He's one of the best coordinators in all of the NFL. And I think he was with the Chargers. I'm not sure if he's still there. I think he left since Harbaugh came in. But Deion's going to have to bring in some coaches. Deion has the marketing down. He can bring in guys left and right. And the transfer portal, it's easy to write a check. But even at that, Brad, it surprises me. And I think this is a good transition before we get into the portal and the recruiting class. You know, Jason Phillips, the new wide receiver coach, another guy that's come in. He coached with Deion at Jackson State. He was the offensive coordinator there during Shedeur's freshman year, had a successful season. I think they lost in the conference championship or whatever championship they play in there. Had a great season. I think they went 13-1 or something like that. Then, you know, went off and did his own thing. Now he comes back with Deion. He played with Deion at the Falcons back in the day in the NFL, played wide receiver for the Falcons. And Brad, again, I just go back to the thought of why are coordinators and position coaches not leaving their jobs in a heartbeat to go be with Deion if it's that good of a chance, if it's that good of an opportunity. And I think the actions speak for themselves. These coaches, these younger coaches, they're sticking with the Kalen DeBoers, the Kirby Smarts, the whoever you want to talk about, the Steve Sarkisians, right? They're jumping to these opportunities. And I think it's going to speak for itself. Now, like I said, that's a pretty good segue. And real quick, I want to mention one more thing. I know that Deion also added Warren Sapp to his coaching staff to help out with the D line. Again, Warren Sapp, one of the greatest defensive linemen to ever play in the NFL. Can he coach? I don't know. You can motivate these kids all you want. You can bring in these star-studded names as coaches, but at the end of the day, they got to be able to coach. And you got to teach these kids technique. You got to keep teaching them strength and conditioning. You got to teach them in the right ways. And I worry with all of these freshmen transferring out of Colorado, these quote unquote one and dones that we only see really in basketball, are these guys really being prepared in the right ways? Brad, I'll turn it back to you. Let's jump into the portal, to the recruiting. What's going on with Colorado? What are your thoughts on writing this check versus developing players? Talked about Deion not going into in-home visits. When we look at the roster coming into this year, if I did the math correctly, at least 85% of the roster is transfers from this year.
Right. So, yeah, very, very, it's a perfect transition because this is, to me, this is where I think Deion is struggling with it. And I want to just build on a point that you made. Deion, as far as, you know, X's and O's and what he's doing, I think there's some question marks there. I'm not saying he's on the hot seat or whatever because he seems to be really, really liked in Boulder, but I don't think he's quite as hot of a commodity as he was last year. I will say that I saw a clip the other day that really made an impression that he does care about these guys because he was really called out one of his young men in a team meeting for, you know, not paying attention in class. So I think he does care about these guys beyond the field. So hats off to him for that. You know, take away the stuff off the football field. I think he really, really does care about these young men and prepare them for life. So I think I really, really commend him for that. Now, getting back to the recruiting side of things, the transfer portal, that you hit a good point because Colorado in 2023, and, you know, this is according to a couple of different sites, but they had a top 25 recruiting class. They brought in some guys. You deep dive into the numbers, they brought in, this is mind-blowing to me, they brought in 11 high school players. 11. I mean, that is just mind-blowing. And let me mention, one of those was a JUCO guy. So he's got 2 years of eligibility. So you bring in essentially 10 high school players. They went and got some guys. You know, I'm going to mention Cam McKell was an athlete from Statesboro, Georgia. You know, Nate, us being here in Georgia, he's a name that I heard a lot about. I know that Georgia was hot after him. I believe Ohio State was hot after him, and he decided to go to Colorado. Eric Brantley is another guy from the state of Georgia. He played at powerhouse Valdosta. The big one was, of course, Jordan Seaton. He was a 5-star offensive lineman. You know, I've seen that some think he's going to play tackle, some think he's going to play on the inside, but he was a big-time get for Colorado at a big-time position of need. But Nate, signing 10 high school guys and a JUCO guy, that to me is mind-blowing. And then they bring in 29 transfers. And look, I get it. It's the way of the portal now. We've seen this from Deion now 2 straight years. This idea of, you know, we're going to sign not a whole lot of high school guys and we're going to bring in portal guys. And my thing is that, you know, you don't know if these guys are going to transition. Are they looking just to build their draft stock? There's so many different thoughts. I just don't think it's sustainable for Deion. I really don't. And, you know, Nate, I've seen a lot of things that say, well, Colorado has got Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. They're going to be fine. No, they're not. I mean, because what did Colorado do last year? They started off really hot. To be honest, they didn't beat anybody. And then, you know, you saw the first time they played against legit competition in Oregon, you could tell within 4 possessions of the game, those two teams were not even on the same level. I think if Deion is going to continue to stick at Colorado and try to be successful in college, his roster management and the way he approaches a roster, in my opinion, has got to change. I think he's got to start going out and trying to focus on more high school guys. I appreciate the way that there's been some college coaches attack the portal where they're trying to be more selective about who they get in the portal, you know, trying to fill a need here and there versus, you know, let's just cut it off and restart every year. It's just not sustainable to me. Nate, before I turn it back over to you real quick, just want to hit on 2 portal guys that Colorado did bring in. I think these guys will have a chance to make an impact. That is wide receiver Will Shepherd. Will Shepherd was a phenomenal receiver for Vanderbilt. He's big. He's a good route runner. Will Shepherd's going to make an impact at Colorado. I would venture to say I think he has a chance to be the leading receiver there. He's going to be really, really good. And then, Nate, you mentioned that running back Dylan Edwards transfer. They did bring in Dalen Hayden from Ohio State. He was, you know, kind of the third back there at Ohio State, but a guy that's capable. But, you know, that, like I said, Nate brought in 29 transfers. This is not new. We've seen Deion do this, but they got to figure some things out very, very quickly. Colorado's got a tough schedule coming up too. I know we're going to get to that, but that's my thoughts on where they stand recruiting wise and transfer portal wise.
Yeah, Brad, you hit on a lot of great points. I want to start off with these 2 points. Let me read some stats for you. National rankings right now for Colorado ranks 64th in high school recruiting, previously at 35. They've dropped 29 spots. Then you look at the Big 12 rankings and the conference they're in, 15th. They've dropped 9th from 6th. That's not good, Brad. And look, you can say all you want. Oh, they're going to be fine. They got Shedeur. They got Travis. Travis Hunter got hurt last year, and they looked like a whole different team. Granted, they didn't have to play as much competition. But like you said, when you saw them play against Oregon, look, and these other teams, let's call a spade a spade. They got spanked like a baboon. I mean, they got absolutely ripped apart in every single area on that field. They got exposed. And Dan Lanning said it best. They're playing for clicks. We're playing for championships.
That's right.
And look, they backed it up because they beat them like a drum. I want to say this, though. I want to give Deion some credit. If you are going to go to the portal, go and fix the problems that you have the most. And what did he do? He went out and got a bunch of defensive linemen and offensive linemen, which were the key pieces that I think they were missing up front. You bring in a guy like Quincy Wiggins, edge rusher, 6'4.5", 273 from LSU. Then you bring in an interior offensive lineman from Houston, big get for Colorado Buffs, and Tyler Johnson, 6'5", 325. They get another edge rusher from Kentucky, Keaton Wade, who was a 4-star, really highly rated guy, very talented, 6'5", 250. The list goes on. I could go on and on to get Anquin Barnes from Alabama, defensive lineman, 6'5", 299. So here's the next question. What do they do now? You bring in the guys, you bring in the coaches. What do you do now? Year 2 and 3 are going to show. Now, I think that's a good transition to our next point. And Brad, we're going to pull up the schedule here in a second. They brought in a quarterback to hopefully back up and learn from Shedeur and Destin Wade from Kentucky. So both Wade brothers, they're brothers. A lot of people don't know that. The Wade brothers played for Kentucky. Now they're both at Colorado. This could be good for Deion. This could be it will be another ESPN storyline on College Game Day at some point. They'll talk about the Wade brothers. It'll be a charity story. Oh, how great is this? But the reality is, Brad, you got to play and you got to show up on Saturdays and you got to win in those big moments. Can they do that? With that being said, let's jump into their schedule for this year. I think they finished off the year winning 3 or 4 games last year, Brad. You can concur to that. But this year, they're starting off with a tough one at home versus North Dakota State. We're big on Matt Entz going to USC for the Fighting Trojans as their new defensive line coach or linebackers coach. And North Dakota State's not backing down, Brad. They're still a very, very highly talented program with a great coaching staff. That one's at home for Colorado. But then they got to go back-to-back on the road at Nebraska and at Colorado State. Nebraska very much improved since we last saw them on the field in the fall, and most of their games they lost by 3 points. They got exposed last year against Colorado. I don't think that's going to be the case this year for the Cornhuskers. And look, Colorado State, they did not forget about last year. And it doesn't matter who's on the field for them. They're going to be coming for the Buffs. Brad, I'll turn over to you. I mean, I could go through the whole schedule, but thoughts on the upcoming schedule for the Colorado Buffs? Do they win more than 4 games?
Yeah, I mean, Nate, you hit it. I think they're going to be, to be honest, I think they're going to be around 4 to 6 games. Look, you brought up a good point. They have got to improve on both lines of scrimmage, which, that's going to be a toss up. We know they're going to be explosive, but the schedule's tough. I mean, I think, even dropping Texas and Oklahoma, the Big 12 is still going to be tough. It's going to be wide open, but it's going to be difficult. To me, their last 3 games are extremely difficult. Utah, who excuse me, who I think is going to be really good. Kansas is good, and Oklahoma State. If they go in, say, 500 at those 3 games, and those are all in November, they're going to have a losing record. So they've got to steal some. At Nebraska, you mentioned that's going to be tough. At UCF is going to be tough. I mean, it's not easy. It is not easy.
Easier from there.
No, it does not. And man, my thing. You mentioned Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter is the big name. He's going to be the big name. And I know he is very dynamic. I'm a big fan of his. He did get hurt last year, Nate. My question is, can he still afford to play, 120 snaps a game? I don't think so. I think at some point they're going to have to decide, where do we play him? Is he more of an impact on offense or defense? Because we know he's going to return punts and we know he's going to return kicks. I think he is that generational and special an athlete. I mean, I really, really do. For them to get where they want to, I think that they're going to have to make a decision. We're going to play him more on, this side of the ball versus that side. And, we're going to use him sparingly, or else, it's going to be a case where, they might miss some time. Like I said, Nate, my final thought on this is I think Colorado's somewhere between 4 or 6 wins, and we're going to be talking about, Deion maybe on the hot seat, or we've seen some things that, hey, he is here just to maybe get Shedeur and Travis drafted, and then he's out. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see come December where Colorado is at.
Yeah, Brad. To your point, real quick, I think that Travis Hunter is definitely going to make more of an impact on the defensive side of the ball. And I
agree with that.
I think it shows in the portal. They brought in 4 wide receivers as opposed to only bringing 2 defensive backs in the portal. That obviously shows the game plan they're heading towards. I think Travis Hunter is going to have to focus on one position this year if he really, really wants to increase his draft stock. Because, look, let's be honest, we're not playing in the 1990s or the 1980s anymore. You can't play 2 positions. You can't play 2 sports. It's too much. It's too much. And with the speed, with the training, with all that, it's merely impossible to expect him to play both sides of the ball. Now, he might come in for certain packages, but I don't think you're going to see anything like you saw last year.
Yeah.
One and done. I don't know what you would call it, experiment. Travis Hunter is going to be playing defense. That's his specialty. That's where he thrives. That's where he's going to be drafted in the top 5. And look, he's a great player. But a player doesn't make up a whole team. When you look at the game of football, you got to depend on everyone. We better hope that Colorado gets up to date with offensive line and defensive line, which it looks like they did both in their signing class and in the defensive side of the ball and the D line.
Yeah.
Brad, to your point also, is Deion a two and done? Is he going to be gone after his son gets drafted? Look, they don't have any commits for 2025. Does that say anything? I don't know. I don't think that's something that the mass media is going to talk about on ESPN. They're going to run with Deion as long as they can. Here at Break the Huddle, we're going to tell you the truth. We're going to not necessarily be boots on the ground in Boulder, Colorado, but look, we're going to tell you how we think it is and how I think it is right now, Brad. It's not looking too good for the Buffs after 2025. Deion could be out. He could retire and head back to his cush job at NFL Network, calling the NFL Combine.
Nate, I wanted to make one final point, but before I turn it over back to you, you mentioned no commits for 2025. Colorado's had 3 decommits. They had 3 decommits in their 2025 class. So these are all guys that were committed, that decommitted. They all committed within about 2 weeks back in November.
Yep.
And 2 of these guys were really highly rated. You had Winston Watkins, who was a very highly rated receiver, and then a really highly rated quarterback in Antoine Hill. That tells me something when guys like that look, I get it. 2 high-profile guys like that seem really excited to go play for Deion. That's puzzling. Then you throw in, your Dylan Edwards, who was highly rated, and Cormani McLean, who I know we have not hit on this episode, but we've hit on him in some other transfer portal episodes. He has entered the portal. Maybe these guys are seeing, we're not getting developed to go to at Colorado in regards to our pro future. So Nate, that's my final thought, is something's going on in Boulder. I can't put my finger on it, but I think I personally, like I said, my closing point, personally think they are not getting the development, and they're realizing that. And unfortunately for Colorado and Deion Sanders, these high school kids may be realizing it too earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you nailed it right on the head. And with that being said, we're going to get into more Colorado football as we head further into the summer, into the fall. If you're a Colorado fan, let us know in the comments what you think is the best opportunity for the Buffs this year heading into the 2024 season and beyond. And Brad, I'll close out with this final point. I think it's going to go one or two ways this year. As my early prediction / hot take, it's either going to be a 3 or 4 win season or a 9 win season. I don't think you're going to see anything between. I don't think you're going to see Colorado go 6, 7 wins. I think it's either going to be 8 or 9, or it's going to be 3 or 4. It's going to go one way or the other. I don't think you're going to get that balance, that bowl of porridge, quote unquote, that's just right. You're either going to get it way too hot or way too cold, from the old tale. But yeah, let us know in the comments what you think. Be sure to subscribe down below. Give this video a big thumbs up. Share it with your friends. It's time to break the huddle.